Good morning, everybody. Do you play MMORPGs? I mean, probably you're watching this YouTube video. In MMORPGs, generally you have the trifecta of classes, your tanks, your healers, and your DPS. Dungeons & Dragons Online is a little bit weird in that pretty much anybody can perform whatever role as long as their character is built properly. Additionally, everyone having some amount of healing is usually pretty good in a party. Everyone being as tanky as they possibly can be is really important because monster aggro goes all over the place, and there's a whole bunch of different monster types that you can't even just aggro in general. Oh, there's a construct? Well, Intimidate and a lot of the forced aggro attacks don't actually work against them, meaning that you can't just press a single button and all of a sudden you hold all the aggro in a room like you can in some other video games. However, this doesn't mean that you can avoid using these different things. You want people who can actually heal in combat. You want people who can actually take a hit, and sometimes it's really important to have people take control during fights. And that is where tanks come in. Now, tanks in Dungeons & Dragons Online are, as I said, a little bit different for a couple primary reasons. First, they're not limited to just a few classes. Anybody in the game that can get enough Intimidate can tank. It's just the Intimidate skill for the most part. Sure, there's lots of defensive components, but in general, holding threat and being able to keep monsters on you is using the Intimidate button on your keyboard, which anybody can do because it's just a skill. And as a result, it makes being tanky something that any class could technically do. Do you want to play a tank bard, tank artificer, tank warlock? Doesn't matter. What matters is your Intimidate button and the surrounding supportive skills that you can get to make sure your character is alive and able to hold threat and not die in combat. Now, in the lower tiers of the game, normal, hard, elite difficulty, tanks really aren't that relevant. In general, you kind of just want to have as much tankiness on your character that you can get, having a physical magical resistance rating, armor class, health, that sort of thing. However, in the higher tiers of content, so that's the Reaper modes and the raids as well, here you kind of want tanks. Especially for raids, you definitely need tanks for raids. And I have avoided making a tank for a very long time. And the main reason I've avoided it is that tanking in DDO has a major flaw. Tanks are expected to focus very, very heavily on defense and have not enough offense. And this is a problem because leveling in DDO is like 90% of the game. You have to get to level 30. So while it's cool that you can make a tank that's really powerful at level 30, you have to get there. And then once you get there, well, you need to farm out gear. And farming out gear isn't very good if your character doesn't do any damage. A lot of games get around this, like Final Fantasy XIV or World of Warcraft, by actually letting tanks deal damage and do things on the landscape, but Dungeons & Dragons hasn't really done a lot of that. Now, the new Epic Destiny system is kind of shifting more towards a more offensive playstyle for tanks, the Unleading Sentinel tree in particular, granting a whole bunch of bonus damage and hit chance for tank-type characters, so there may be a bigger shift towards the more active, melee combat-oriented tank. However, my solve for this was to use the Primal Avatar spell abilities to allow me to tank monsters by dealing not a super high, but a reasonable amount of spell damage. This means I can focus primarily on defense, getting as much health, as much armor class, physical resistance rating, magical resistance rating, and all sorts of defensive features that I physically can, but instead of actually meleeing the monsters, I can cast spells at them instead, dealing enough damage and having damage over time effects to be able to continually generate aggro on monsters, while also being able to be very maneuverable and not having to stand in one place and actually stand next to the monster that's trying to kill me. As a result, it kind of combines the best of both worlds, the benefits of being a ranged combatant and not having to deal too much with being in melee combat with the monsters and taking hits, and being a tank, being able to properly hold threat and maneuver monsters into the right place. And so I bring you the Paladin Spell Tank. Now, I've actually already made a video about this before, and I'll put a link in the description if you want to see the preliminary version, but this is my finalized version. I looked at some of the things, I went over and I rebuilt it to kind of make the best one. 18 levels of Paladin, 1 Fighter, 1 Wizard. Now, the reason I went with this split is because the Paladin capstone isn't really that great, and instead, by taking a level of Fighter and Wizard, it gives me 2 feats back. Wizard gets you a free meta magic feat, and you take all the meta magic feats to be able to power up your spell-like abilities. Fighter gets me one of my shield feats, which means I've got 2 additional feats to play around with, which effectively just turns into toughness for more hit points. Additionally, the Wizard gives me access to shield and night shield, so I can get some more physical and magical resistance rating and a little bit less damage taken from grazing hits. And for the leveling process, because I take the level of Wizard very, very early, it lets me use the Fate Arc Illusionist tree to actually deal some damage. Now, I will say that my recommended course of action for leveling this character is to level it by playing something else. Do this build and follow the build. However, just play Two-Handed Fighter Paladin, take the Two-Handed Fighter feat lines, but take the right appropriate levels, and then use a Lesser Heart of Wood at 20, or even just take it all the way to 30, and then reincarnate it with an epic reincarnation back down from 30 to 20 and then turn it into the tank build, that is my recommended leveling path for this character, because it is a beast at level 20 once you have all of your spells, and I leveled this character all the way from 20 to 30, doing pretty much exclusively R5 and up. In fact, we did R10 Keep on the Borderlands, which was very stupid and very fun, and this character was tanky. And I've taken this character not just from 20 to 30, doing high Reaper quests, but also at level 30, running a ton of R10s, doing a bunch of raids, and honestly, it has been an absolute dream to play. I love the way this character feels. You're able to maneuver the monsters at a range, so your character has a great deal of control, being able to intimidate monsters or even just cast spells at them, allowing them to take a bunch of damage and want to attack you versus your friends and allies. Being multifaceted and having both area of effect heals at ranged, heals for single target, as well as all the different spell attacks, it makes this really cohesive package. I find that oftentimes in combat, I have to make a lot of decision making as to whether I'm going to move and engage different types of monsters, where I'm going to direct my next bit of attention, watching out for people's hit points. It gives me a lot of different directions to go in combat, and my favorite part about all of this is if no one is around or I gotta farm something, I can. This character has enough damage to be able to comfortably do quests all the way up through Reaper 4 by itself. It's way faster if I do it with other people, because bosses can take 100 years, but at least I can do it. And especially for farming Epic Elite, it feels really good and comfortable for being able to farm out quests if I want to get gear. Additionally, the gear component is very, very small. Once you're at a minimum level of tankiness, which is basically just kind of being level 30 and having some gear equipped, because most of your spell power actually comes from meta magic feats, you don't even need to have too much gear to be able to do a good amount of damage. And what that means is that your character can farm out all of its gear on its own. So if you're more of a solo player, this will work for you. Although if you're a solo player, you shouldn't play a tank, just pointing that out. Tanks are group players. This character does work, like I said, by itself up through Reaper 4, and it's very comfortable. But again, tanks are designed for group play, so if you're thinking about a solo play character, this might not be the best avenue to go down, but it is still very powerful. But as I said, that big caveat, this is a pain to level by yourself. It is easily doable, and your character is never going to die through the entire leveling process. So as long as you don't mind joining groups and having some other people help you, it shouldn't take too long, or you can do what I did, which is use an autos box. Now, it was pointed out to me by my smart and well-intentioned viewers that I actually had 4 individual Hearts of Wood in my inventory on that character, so I could have just used any of those, but you know what, I'll save those for some monsoons or super ultra very rainy days when I need them in the future. This character is fun to me because it allows me to do things that I enjoy. Impact the combat in what's happening, be able to have a multiple role-based character, but then also still be a tank. And the thing that I think is the best for you guys out there is that this character is so low investment. It doesn't need Fate Arc Illusionist unless you're planning on leveling with it. You can play this as a free-to-play character, as it doesn't even require any special races or anything else like that. The races I was deciding between was Dwarf for some extra hit points and defensive stats, Dragonborn because it looks cool, and Human because you get an extra feat for some more toughness and defensive stats. And I asked Twitch chat, and they had me vote Dragonborn, so that's what we did. We went with Dragonborn because it looks cool. But this character can be played as a human with the free-to-play. It's Paladin, Wizard, and Fighter, meaning that if you want to try this out and make a brand new character and you're just getting started, this character does wonders. Important note though, again, tragically bad until level 20, at which point everything turns on. No super strict gear requirements and very easy to farm out, especially by yourself. The only item that I would say that's nice is there is a couple pieces of raid gear that really help round it out, specifically some of the Feywild gear that's very easy to acquire because it's gear nobody wants, which makes it even easier to gear up. And since this is a tank character, well, getting in and doing a couple raids is kind of what you want to do with it anyway. So if you're like me and you've never really enjoyed tanking in Dungeons & Dragons Online, but you want to try tanking with something that might be a little bit more fun, a little bit more up your alley, a little bit more active, then please check out the Fun Tank as I detail for you right now. Paladin, Fun Tank, how do you build it? So, as I mentioned before, this is a Paladin 18, 1 Fighter, 1 Wizard. The basic breakdown that I took this is I took the Wizard level as my second level, so Paladin 1, then Wizard. This allowed me to take, during the leveling process, the Fate Arc Illusionist tree, just to grab illusory weapons so I could have some charisma and damage, because this character is not a strength character, it's a tank. If you want to try to make this character, I'm going to put an alternate build guide below that you can just follow along, which is for people who want to get to 20, or even take it all the way to 30, and then just do a quick reincarnate, like an epic reincarnation back down to 20, so they can play the real tank thing, which is how I would recommend doing it. Play this two-handed fighter paladin to 30, and then do epic reincarnate back to 20, and then re-level it as the tank build. It's the easiest way to go around it. Here's what you need to know. Constitution is your most important stat. Start with an 18. Outside of that, you need a minimum of a 13 intelligence to be able to get access to combat expertise. I just started with 14 because even numbers are good. You need some wisdom to be able to cast some spells and have some mana. You don't need that much mana, especially once you get to epics. It's usually pretty flexible. So, you know, spell point items and stuff take care of that. I started with a 12, but if you have items, tomes, you can start with an 8 if you want. And then charisma, I started with an 18, but you don't need to start with an 18. You can start with less than that if you want. This is just for your intimidates and all of your saving throws. That's pretty much it. It doesn't really affect anything else. So, but saving throws are important. So getting a plus 18 to all my saves is kind of nice right now for being a paladin. As far as your skills go, intimidate is the most important thing. Then after that, I like heal, spellcraft, and use magic device. Balance and tumble, not really that important. So since my character started with a 14 intelligence, that means I get 4 skill points per level. So intimidate, heal, spellcraft, use magic device, and then of course you can take balance and tumble if you want as well. But these are kind of like the main ones. Intimidate, obviously, is for tanking stuff. You press the button, monsters hit you. Spellcraft is more spell damage, which is just good. Heal is more healing, which is just good. And use magic device is essential because you don't have a way to get rid of negative levels on this character. So you want to have a way to get rid of negative levels on this character. As far as the feats go, I took all of the shield feats, shield mastery, improved shield mastery, and greater shield mastery. I took meta magic feats, quicken, maximized, and power for all of the spell-like abilities that you actually throw out. Quicken, maximized, and power do nothing during heroic leveling, and you have to take all of them during heroic leveling, which can kind of explain why it starts to have a little bit of a slowdown there on some of these things. I also took, not just of these feats, also toughness. I've taken toughness 2 times on this character, which is fairly nice. And then I also took combat expertise to give you the additional defensive stance here, so you can get more armor class, which is just nice. You technically don't need combat expertise, so you could start with a lower intelligence if you want, but it's definitely helpful for being a tank, because more armor class makes your character more powerful. Moving into epics, this character I took epic toughness, because I had toughness, and you're maxing out con every time you level up. Intensify for some extra spell damage, because I wanted more spell damage. Epic damage reduction for physical resistance rating. Bulwark of defense, because this gives more physical resistance rating when you're in Unyielding Sentinel, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then Sign of Celestia, just because it's 150 hit points. You can't get really better than that. As far as the Paladin spells go, they're not really too essential. Death Ward is amazing. True Resurrection is really nice. I took Prayer and Magic Circle against Evil. If somebody else is casting Magic Circle against Evil, you could take Resurrection if you want instead on the list here, so Resurrection's not bad. But I like having Circle because not everybody casts this one, and it makes you immune to like Command, which rolling a 1 is an irritating thing, so just get rid of that. And then Prayer is nice because this is a +5 bonus to all of your saving throws and skill checks. And that's really great because Intimidate can sometimes be hard to come by, or sometimes you're in a pinch when you need your use magic device to come up. Say a Beholder hits you with a negative level drain, and so it takes off your Death Ward, it negative levels you, and now you're in this like weird stuck situation. Prayer gets you that use magic device to be able to use those scrolls when you might not be able to do that. And then I took Angel Skin and Righteous Command. You don't need Righteous Command. I just took it because it gives me a little bit more melee power, which causes my shield throw to do a smidge more damage. And then Angel Skin, of course, is just a bunch of physical and magical resistance rating up to caster level 20. But that's actually not true. It gives a little bit more than caster level 20 because of the bonuses to caster levels that we now get for epics. As you can see here, if I decide to cast Angel Skin, it will say casting this at level 23. And so this is actually casting at 23, giving me even more physical and magical resistance rating than what it normally says, which is one of the weird quirks of the new system. Technically, Paladins, if you're pure, you get an extra 5 physical and magical resistance rating on all your Paladins, which is kind of nice. Similarly, that also affects Righteous Command, because this is max 15, which means if you're playing a pure Paladin, this would go up to 25. In fact, actually, this goes up to that for me, so I get 20 melee power. So my melee power is 100, and then I press this button, and now I'm at 115. So this one doesn't scale, but the other one does. Okay, now I have no idea how this works. Anyway. Wizard. The wizard spells that I took here are Shield and Night Shield. Shield and Night Shield are great because I use them with the enhancements that I'll go over in just a minute. Now, what enhancements do you need? I chose Dragonborn because Dragonborn gets 2 things. Brutal Spellcasting, which gives you 75% more hate than you'd normally get on spells. This is one of the few spell aggro effects in the entire game so I went with this one. Additionally, you get extra Intimidate out of here, and Spellcraft, which is okay for the extra damage, and then Health, Healing Amp, Health, Healing Amp. All good things. Sacred Defender, because this is all defensive, tanky stuff. Everything in here is really good. All of the extra health, Constitution, the extra shield, max dex bonus and armor class, the defensive bonuses from the physical magical resistance rating, the extra lay on hands, which is nice, and then pretty much all the tier 5s. Important note about Divine Revelation, only put 1 point in here. 1 point gives you 100 hit points, and then the other 2 points give you like armor class and saving throws or some nonsense. That's not important. You just want the 1 point for the 100 hit points. I was originally using Stalwart Defender, but I changed. For the rest of my points, I'm actually using a bunch of the wizard trees. So Vanguard, I'm using for Missile Shield for the Deflect Arrows effect, plus more Intimidate. This character does not have a lot of past lives. This is a 3rd life character, but all of my past lives are Favored Soul, so they have no impact on my tanking whatsoever. This is effectively a past lifeless character. I don't have anything important, I guess 40 spell points, and some Spell Pen that I don't need. So armor training is good for the Intimidate and the jump. It also reduces the armor check penalty, which means my character can effectively tumble in combat, which is very convenient. Feydark Illusionist is here because you get You've Got My Back. This means when I cast Magic Missile and Shield, I get 10 PRR and 10 MRR, so that's just a really nice benefit, plus a bunch of extra spell points, which I like. Eldritch Knight, which is just hit points. It's literally 25 hit points, 10 hit points for this, and 3 here. And then Pale Master is 7 points for 30 hit points. And 30 hit points is pretty nice. I'm planning on making possibly some more changes, possibly removing the Pale Master here and not taking this, and instead going in and grabbing Falconry, which is also an option, to get the extra quality bonus to hit points here as well. So pick up both of those, and then by getting the quality, so getting rid of that, getting rid of this, taking some points out of Vanguard, putting the points into the quality hit points, and then instead of taking what I took here, I took the Feat Deific Warding as one of my Epic Destiny feats. Instead of taking Deific Warding, I forgot to mention the Epic Destiny feats, Perfect Shield Mastery, Elusive Target, Deific Warding. Instead, you could take like Toughness if you want, or Fount of Life for some extra defense. There's a lot of flexibility here, so I'm still working that out. But for the most part, you don't need to do that. I'm not using Falconry as the moment, and it's good enough for running R10s. But let's go to the Epic Destinies, which is kind of the last place. I went with Unyielding Sentinel and Primal Avatar as my 2 trees, and I don't spend any points anywhere else. This is a 54-point build right here. If you do not have 54 points, I would recommend that, what is this, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I would recommend dropping probably all of the points out of Endless Vigil, or actually only on 2 of the points out of Endless Vigil, so your Lay on Hands does regenerate, but only have 1 point in here if you were planning on doing the 52-point build, which is a first life character with no tomes or anything. So that would be the plan here. The basic gist is you go Primal Avatar first. This is the first thing. You get this right away. Primal Avatar, you want to spend as many points as you can here first. So take, this here, grab this ability, this one, and then once you level up some more, grab this one and take the cores. But Primal Avatar is the most important part of this character because the Unyielding Sentinel is the not dying part, and you want to take this too, but the Primal Avatar is essential for allowing your character to do stuff. Specifically Carrion Swarm. This is the bread and butter of the whole build. Press a button, and all monsters in an area are now poisoned and diseased. So they got the poison, they got the acid, they're melting, they're taking a bunch of damage over time. And so you want to have that ticking up. It also stacks, so you want to keep casting this on monsters, and every time you cast it, it stacks up to 3 times, giving you a ton of damage. And then you have Shardstorm, and Shardstorm surrounds you with these dagger projectiles that then shoot out at nearby targets. That's not really important. What matters is you get this at its core where you get the, Shard Reflection, which gives you temporary hit points based off of your maximum. So if I enter my defensive stance here, my character has 3905 hit points, which is pretty nice. If I press Shardstorm, I get this kind of green effect going on my character. I get these daggers, which shoot out. But notice, 1321 temp hit points. That's nice. That's a lot of temporary hit points. And you can just spam this out. And the more hit points you get, the better this effect even becomes. And you can use this every 12 seconds or 18 seconds, making it very, very, very strong to just spam, 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 spam. Out of Unyielding Sentinel, grab all the cores. I didn't get the extra Intimidate here because my Intimidate is above the cap. You only need to get about 130 something in combat, and I do that with all the buffs active, like when you have every spell cast on your character. Divine Energy Resistance here is just convenient. I like it. Moving up, we've got Renewal, because with Renewal and Rejuvenation Cocoon, I'm actually able to stack a reasonable amount of positive spell power, so my positive spell power is 530, and so with Renewal and Rejuvenation Cocoon, I can constantly belt out heals on people, which is very, very convenient for this character. You gotta have the mantle, of course. Grab Knight's Challenge, which is the shield throw, as well as the stun. This is your bread and butter. This allows you to intimidate targets at a range and stun monsters, and you need this effect, so you'll like this. Extra threat here. This is the only source of spell threat in the game. So you need this. You gotta get Commanding Presence. Without Commanding Presence, you don't have that much. So my character's spell threat is actually around 525 right now. I pick up extra spell threat from Divine Righteousness. It says 200%. It's not. It's only 100%. I don't know how that works. And then when you intimidate monsters, you get an extra 100%, which means you up to 725%. There are a couple bugs of things that don't work, unfortunately. One example is I'm currently using the Winter set on this character, and the Winter set's 100% threat is not. It's melee threat. It does not apply to spells in any capacity, so just keep that in mind. Moving up, you get the Shield Mastery for the extra physical resistance rating. This Lay on Hands thing, as well as the Super Lay on Hands, which makes it so it's AoE. This makes it so your Lay on Hands scales off your Constitution. So I heal for quite a bit with the Lay on Hands. If my Constitution wasn't like so bad and was a little bit better, I'd be healing for more, obviously. But the benefit is it's not really for me. What matters is I can see a healer going down or someone taking damage, or a fireball hit the party on R10, which almost wipes out everyone, and then I go shoosh, and then every single person around gets healed for that whole amount, that 3,400. So most people don't have 3,400 hit points, so it's an entire party save. It's like the unwipe of your party, which is kind of cool. Moving up to the top, we have Undying Vanguard, which is the big capstone ability, which makes it so that you gain a bunch of damage as well as temporary hit points, and you become big, which is cool because you can actually use this in town if you want to get really big on your horse and go shoo. But most importantly, it's the 10,000 hit points here, and that temp HP will last a surprisingly long amount of time. So awesome for R10s. You can do this every 5 minutes, so keep that in mind. And that's the gist of how this character is built. Just kind of take all this stuff. All this stuff is good. I wouldn't really sacrifice anything here. Don't worry about spending 41 points. The other trees aren't super great. If you have more points, you can definitely take some other stuff. There are a lot of weird options. You know, getting Dimension Door as a tank is extremely valuable out of Shadow Dancer. Plus, you can always use the extra spell points here. So, you know, that's always nice. Yeah, I actually haven't thought about anything else. There's probably a lot of good options for, like, low twists. But maybe Grandmaster Flowers, picking up some other defensive options, because you get hit points, and you get the stunning DCs as well, which you need for the Throw the Boom. Honestly, there's too many good options, so just keep it in mind that there's no one set thing. As far as equipment goes, my character is using Winter as well as some Autumn. So I'm using the Winter set here, which gives me 7 pieces for all the artifact bonus to everything, with the pieces being the Heavy Chest piece, the Bracers, the Winter Boots. My artifact is the Prince's Gauntlet because I liked the Constitution, Quality Resistance, and Quality Sheltering. Plus I got a Mythic 3, which I can't complain about. As well, for Winter, I'm using the Dire Bear Belt because this gives Insightful Sheltering. I have the Shield, the Bulwark of Snow, which is just very convenient since it's part of the Winter set. And then last but not least, I have the Icon of Bitter Wind. This is a raid item, and since I'm not using the Sharn set, I don't have anything for Intimidate, and this is Intimidate and Exceptional Alluring skills, which is very nice, plus Superior Heroism, which is great. The Insight doesn't do anything for me, but that's okay. This raid item is not sought after, so if you do any Dryad and the Demigod and it drops, there's almost a certain chance that you're the only one who needs it in the raid. Other people will roll on it, because there are people in DDO that roll on every piece of gear, and then just put it in their weapon, and if you do that during a raid, you're a bad person. Anyway, moving on. Outside of just that, to get your spell power up, we're using a combination of the Dustbone Ring, which gives Profane Life Force, and that's basically it. But putting that with the Ring of Falls Decay is a 2-piece fall set, so I get a little bit of spell power, and the Ring of Falls Decay gives you all the spell power you need. This item, I'm on the fence with. 44 hit points is nice, so I like that, but it's all it gives, and so if I can upgrade this, I might look to do that. Other weird pieces that are in here, I also grabbed 2-piece Summer set because this Prince's Gauntlet here is a Summer and Winter artifact, and since it is using the 2-piece Summer set, I also get the Magical Resistance rating here, which is pretty good, and it gives Crown of Summer for the 15 extra healing amp and nothing else. I don't need the Smites, the Hallow, the Eternal, that other stuff is useless. So again, I'm going to see if I can make some adjustments, but this is kind of where I'm at right now. For goggles, I'm using Charisma, Insightful Wisdom, Collective Sight, because for Constitution I have my gloves and my boots, but for Charisma, which I also want for intimidating stuff, I have my goggles, and then I needed to get Insightful Charisma somewhere. And what I realized is that I can actually Kanoth craft a necklace. So this is actually using a Kanoth crafted necklace with Spell Saves 11, Insightful Charisma, Insightful Intimidate. All stats I did not have, and I got one with a blue augment slot, so I put a Sapphire of Defense 32 in there. Character is pretty defensive as is, which is nice. And then for the weapon, I got a Malleable Scepter of Devotion, which is where all of my healing spell power comes from. As far as filigree sets, I don't have anything important. Basically, you just want to use all the tank stuff. You know, Grandfather's Shield, Naya Stools, you know, defensive stuff that's going to give you extra health. However, I do have one life hack for you. You're going to notice that this says shield 75% arcane spell failure. That's because I have a tower shield and armor, and that sucks. However, cheat code, really easy to acquire cheat code as well. This is a holistic stave. The weapon doesn't matter. What matters is that I have a sentient jewel in here with only 4 slots. That's not a lot of XP. I think it's, what, like 12,000? So it takes some time to get there, but it's really not that much. And the benefit is in here, I have Arcane Spell Failure, Arcane Spell Failure, Arcane Spell Failure, and Arcane Spell Failure. So, when before a quest, I click on this set right here, it puts this on, and then boom, all of a sudden, I have no more Arcane Spell Failure, so I can cast my shield and my Night Shield, and then back on. This allows me to keep these spells up pretty much 100% of the time, and never worry about the Arcane Spell Failure, which is very, very, very convenient. So, if you are thinking about something like that, and you don't know how to get rid of that Arcane Spell Failure, that's how you do it. It's not too big of an investment, because like I said, it's only 4 slots, or if you just want to deal with 3 slots, and then just have the 5% here, or use an augment if you want to get rid of 15%, and then you only need a 2-slot sentient jewel, which is insanely easy to get. It's like 1,000 XP. So again, there's a lot of options for whatever you want to do. And so, yeah, that's what you can get done there. But that's pretty much what I have for the gearing and how to build out this character. So if you like it and you want to try it out yourself, please go ahead. If you have any suggestions or comments, please let me know. This character is fun. It's super strong. It works really well. And I know that the defensive stats might not seem like they're the greatest things in the world, but it's important to note that this character is almost never actually in melee combat while holding full threat, which means I don't have to worry about being the most defensive in comparison to some other tanks, because I'm not just standing there. This is not a tank I would recommend for doing high-end raiding with, but introductory raiding, you know, low Reapers, elite raiding, as well as doing R10s. This tank has worked great so far. I've already tested it in some raids, I've already tested it in R10s, and I am looking forward to playing it more, because it's super duper fun, and I can't wait to spend more time running around with this character. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this, make sure you let me know what you think next. I don't know. And thanks. Have a good day. Enjoy your day. Thanks.